Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Psychological Disorders edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at mood disorders, beginning with an overview of mood disorders in general, and then we'll focus on two kinds of mood disorders, depressive disorder and bipolar disorder, and we'll discuss causes for each. With mood disorders, the sufferer has major deviations in their mood, and they feel depression or sometimes even mania. A person with depression feels intense sadness and worthlessness with a loss of energy, while a person with mania is in a frenzied and elated state, and they feel like they have limitless energy. With depressive disorder, the person only experiences the feelings of depression, while with bipolar disorder, they experience periods of both depression and mania. Roughly 1 in 9 of us experience depressive disorder every year, and like with anxiety disorders, females are twice as likely to end up with a diagnosis. Unlike a case of the blues, depressive disorder involves feelings of sadness that are so intense, frequent, and long-lasting that the person is unable to function. And the symptoms aren't just emotional either. We also see physical symptoms. The person may have difficulty eating, sleeping, and they may feel headachy or stomach pains. Cognitive symptoms. They may have difficulty concentrating, and they probably have negative thoughts about themselves and the future. We also see behavioral symptoms. They may have less energy and be less productive, and they may move and talk very slowly. Finally, motivational symptoms. The person can show a lack of interest in doing anything, even things that they used to love doing. So what are the causes of depressive disorder? Well, research has found a big genetic component to depression, suggesting that we get it in part from our parents. We also see some abnormal brain structure and chemistry with depressive disorder. Specifically, the frontal lobes are slightly smaller in depressed patients compared to non-depressed controls, and there's less serotonin and norepinephrine activity as well. Drugs that increase these neurotransmitters help decrease symptoms of depression. Aside from physiological explanations, cognitive psychologists look at the negative, maladaptive, automatic thoughts that plague someone with depression. Things like magnification, where they exaggerate the significance of bad events, or overgeneralization, where they make broad conclusions from a small bad event. In other words, someone with depression interprets everything negatively, like they're wearing gray-colored glasses. Treatments here would work on replacing these maladaptive automatic thoughts with something more positive. With bipolar disorder, the person experiences repeated periods of opposite moods, depression and mania. Depression is the dominant mood, lasting typically somewhere between 3 to 7 weeks, followed by 3 to 7 days of mania. Unlike depressive disorder, bipolar affects men and women equally, and it's much less frequent, with roughly 1 in 50 of us being diagnosed. When they're in the depressed phase, they feel very much like someone with depressive disorder in terms of the emotional, physical, cognitive, behavioral, and motivational symptoms. When they're in the manic state, they pretty much feel the opposite in every way. Emotionally, now they're elated and high. Physically, they have limitless energy and don't need any sleep. Their cognitive judgment is impaired, and they're so full of optimism and delusions of grandeur that they can't see limits to what they can do. Behaviorally, they may talk and move quickly, unable to get their racing thoughts out fast enough. And motivationally, they seek out excitement and companionship. Eventually, they exhaust themselves and the manic phase ends with a big crash into depression, and the cycle happens all over again. So what causes bipolar disorder? Well, we know from family studies that it's highly heritable, so there's a genetic component. We also see some irregularities in the sodium-potassium pump, which would affect how neurons communicate. Additionally, someone with bipolar disorder may have fewer axons and more fluid-filled ventricles in their brain. Aside from physiological reasons, it looks like bipolar needs an environmental trigger to unfold. One trigger could be a major stressful event, but it could also be something positive, like striving and reaching a goal. With someone predisposed to bipolar, this could get them overly aroused and trigger the development of the disorder. Well, we just looked at mood disorders by focusing on 2 different kinds of mood disorders, depressive disorder and bipolar disorder, and we considered possible causes for each. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?